Minister McEntee.
Apologies, sorry, unless Corlia. The events of the past week have rightly caused anger and disgust across our continent and across the world. Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine is unprovoked, it is illegal, it is a blatant disregard of international law, of a sovereign state, but most importantly, it shows a blatant disregard for the sanctity of human life. It is an act of an autocratic and dangerous bully with no regard for the interests of anyone but his own. I think it's important to say that this is Putin's war. As Minister Coveney has outlined, we know there are many Russian people who are as horrified by what he is doing as we are. The images from Ukraine are truly horrifying, of families fleeing their homes for safety, of bombs ripping through cities and towns, and images of doctors fighting in vain to save the life of a 6-year-old girl still wearing her pyjamas. Those doctors were right to demand that the images of that dying girl be shown to Vladimir Putin. Nothing so encapsulated the horror of war. And we must be clear, nobody is responsible for this war but Vladimir Putin and those who surround him in a discredited and morally bankrupt regime. They are responsible for the death and destruction being visited upon a proud country whose only desire is freedom, the freedom to choose their own path, something we in this House recognise. But in Ukraine right now, we see the best of human spirit in President Zelensky and his people fighting for that freedom and the right to manage their own destiny. We see it in the members of the Ukrainian community here returning to help their country at its time of need. We should be proud, Count Corley, that they desire to be part of our European Union, our union of free nations working together for mutual benefit. A union, as we know, in which smaller nations and larger nations share peace and prosperity equally. But that imposes on us here in Ireland and indeed in the European Union a responsibility to do all that we can to help Ukraine and its people. This morning I briefed the Cabinet on discussions that I've been having with EU Justice and Home Affairs colleagues on what we can do as well as the potential implications of the invasion of Ukraine. These include the need to be vigilant against potential security issues as well as cyber threats. But for many of us, the discussion focused on how we can assist the Ukrainian people. Here in Ireland, we've already lifted visa requirements to allow Ukrainian people who want to seek safety to do so here as quickly and as easily as possible. Prior to the lifting of the visa requirement for Ukraine nationals, the Department of Justice, in cooperation with the Department of Foreign Affairs, was working to ensure that it assisted Irish citizens and their family members in Ukraine speedily and with flexibility. This included applications for non-EEA family members of Irish citizens, which were processed swiftly and humanely with no backlog of applications. Family reunification visas for the family members of Irish nationals were granted in 8 out of 8 completed applications made over the days before the invasion. We've also worked to help many families, as Minister Coveney has outlined, expecting babies through surrogacy in Ukraine, who found themselves in unimaginable situations and still find themselves in unimaginable situations, and we will continue to support them. Since I introduced the visa waiver on Friday the 25th of February, a total of 143 Ukrainians have arrived in the state up to 6 p.m. yesterday. However, it should be noted that many of those who travelled were already resident in the state and have travelled back to the state for reasons other than escaping the conflict in Ukraine. We will of course, however, keep the situation and these numbers under review as events transpire. But this is an emergency measure and of course we must do more. And we will act in cooperation with our colleagues across the EU. I will meet colleagues again on Thursday and it's likely that we will activate the EU's Temporary Protection Directive. This is designed to provide a coordinated response to a mass influx of displaced persons, to standardise the giving of temporary protection across EU member states and to ensure that all member states play their part. This measure has not previously been used by the EU, but the view is that it would be a right mechanism to help those leaving Ukraine. As I've said, the Government is clear that Ireland will play its part in assisting Ukraine and its people, and we have a very clear record of helping those in need. In recent months, Ireland has opened the Afghan admission programme to help family members of the Afghan community here from Afghanistan. This programme was the only one of its kind in Europe. Through the Irish Refugee Protection Programme, Ireland has also offered refugee protection to Afghan nationals, as well as meeting ongoing commitments in relation to Syrian refugees. Previous governments have also introduced the Syrian Humanitarian Admissions Programme, which offered temporary Irish residence to vulnerable persons who are present in Syria. It's not possible at this point, I think, to be precise about the numbers of Ukrainian people who will come here under this directive, but it is likely to be significant. The numbers fleeing Ukraine are growing daily, with now an estimation of 650,000 who have fled the country. Significant numbers of displaced persons are locating themselves in neighbouring territories. We have over 280,000 people fled to Poland alone by last Saturday. But I have no doubt, Lascain Corlia, that the Irish people will welcome and will shelter all of those who come here and seek our help. As people, we have never been found wanting, and we will certainly not be found wanting now. The activation of the Temporary Protection Directive would involve creating a simplified protection route to process the numbers of people who would come to Ireland. The Department of Justice has already started working on this. Rather than being required to apply for international protection, those arriving would instead access a simplified process to receive temporary residency permission for 1 year initially, which may be extended to further periods, potentially of up to 3 years. The permission would provide an immediate right to access of the labour market, housing, social welfare, healthcare, education, training and other supports. This will not remove the right of those persons to apply for international protection, and they will be, of course, allowed to do so as well. Whatever the method used to provide refuge, there will of course be implications for a number of government departments and agencies. This includes the Department of Children, Equality, Disability, Integration and Youth, as the state will be required to ensure that persons eligible for temporary protection have access to suitable accommodation when they arrive. The Department of Housing and Local Authorities, as the state would also be required to ensure that those who arrive have access to suitable longer-term accommodation or be supported to attain such accommodation. The Department of Social Protection, as those received in Ireland, would have entitlement to social welfare supports. The Department of Education, as children, of course, must have right and access to education. The Department of Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science for access to further and higher education and to vocational training. And of course, the Department of Health and HSE, as many of those arriving would be entitled to, if not all, access to healthcare. Given the potential implications for a wide range of departments, the Department of Taoiseach is convening interdepartmental meetings in the coming days to further assess the implications of the activation of a temporary protection measure. This includes the potentially significant resource and staffing implications, and seek to develop an approach to support Thursday's discussion within the Justice and Home Affairs Council. On Lascain Corlia, the EU and the West, I believe, have been fully united in their strength and their resolve in responding to Putin's aggression and to supporting the Ukrainian people. It is important that that message of unity and solidarity goes from this House today too, and I have no doubt that it will. From our perspective here in government, we're also taking every action possible to help Ukraine and its people, and again, I know we will have the full support of the House and the Irish people in doing so. Thank you.